At a Sunday dinner in late October, my son-in-law's father grabbed my 8-year-old grandson by the collar, lifted him off his feet, and slammed him against the dining room wall hard enough to crack the drywall. My daughter-in-law's mother smiled and said, "Good. That boy needs to learn." I stood up, walked to the kitchen, and made one phone call. They thought I was just a tired old man with arthritis and a small pension. They had no idea who they were really sitting across from. Before I tell you what happened next, subscribe to Frost Vengeance and tell me in the comments where you're listening from tonight. I read everyone. I'm 68 years old. For 31 years, I was a federal forensic accountant for the Department of Justice, working white-collar crime out of the Hartford field office. I retired with 2 commendations from the FBI director and a Rolodex full of names that still pick up when I call. But to my son Tobias, to his wife Marigold, and especially to her parents, I was just the quiet old man from Wethersfield who shopped at Stop and Shop on Tuesdays and drove a 14-year-old Buick. I hadn't seen my grandson August in 5 months when the text came from Marigold. "Family dinner Sunday. August has been asking about you." No warmth, just functional words. I'd mailed August a birthday card with 2 $50 bills and a hand-drawn fishing boat because he'd told me he wanted to learn to fish. It came back marked return to sender in Marigold's handwriting. I never told Tobias. Some things you swallow. I drove out to Glastonbury on a cold, grey Sunday. Their development was all beige siding and 3-car garages, paid for, I knew, by Marigold's father, Quentin Vexley, who owned 3 luxury car dealerships across central Connecticut and liked everyone to know about all 3. I parked my dusty Buick behind his Range Rover and his wife Penilla's white Mercedes and almost laughed because 30 years earlier, I'd helped put a man in federal prison for buying cars exactly like Quentin's with skimmed pension funds. August ran across the living room the second he saw me and threw his arms around my legs. "Grandpa, you came." He smelled like apple shampoo. He was thinner than I remembered and there was a bruise on his forearm yellowing at the edges, a week or 2 old. Quentin walked in holding a bourbon at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, broad-chested, silver mustache, face permanently flushed. Well, look who decided to show up. He sized me up like a man appraising a trade-in. "Accounting," he repeated when I told him what I used to do, drawing the word out like it tasted funny. "Bean counting? Me? I built something. 3 locations, 42 employees. You ever wonder what it'd be like to actually build something, Tobias?" My son stared at the carpet. He'd worked logistics for a regional distributor for 9 years, steady, decent, honest work. And Quentin spent dinner grinding him down for it. "Your father raised you soft," Quentin said loud enough for the table. "Look at him sitting there like a church mouse." Penella laughed. Marigold smiled at her plate. I kept eating and watching the way I'd watched men across interrogation tables for 3 decades. August kicked the table leg by accident. A drop of bourbon spilled. Quentin's face changed. "Come here, August." Tobias started to object, a small crack of resistance, and Quentin cut him off. August walked around the table with his shoulders already up by his ears, the way I'd seen grown men walk into interrogation rooms. An 8-year-old shouldn't know how to walk that way. It took 4 seconds. Quentin grabbed him by the collar, lifted him clean off the floor, and slammed him into the wall. A thump, a crack, a small high sound like a balloon losing air. Penella kept cutting her chicken. "Good, he needs to learn," Marigold said. "Thank you, Daddy." Tobias half rose from his chair, then sat back down and picked up his fork. I have replayed that moment 1,000 times. I don't blame my son. I understand now what years in that house had done to him. But in that instant, the only thing keeping me in my chair was knowing that if I moved wrong, August would pay for it later, when I wasn't there to see. So, I folded my napkin, stood, and said I needed the restroom. Quentin waved me off. "Try not to fall in, old-timer." I locked the bathroom door, sat on the edge of the tub, and dialed a number I hadn't used in 3 years. Cutthroat State Police, Major Crimes, Lieutenant Broadcast. Vance, it's me. His voice changed instantly. Boss, is that you? I need a unit at 47 Ashbrook Lane, Glastonbury. Witness to felony assault of a minor, approximately 8 years old. Perpetrator is an adult male, 6 feet 2 inches, 220, intoxicated. Child was thrown against a wall hard enough to crack the drywall. He's still on the floor. The mother and grandmother approved of it out loud. I'm in the home. I'm not in danger, but the child needs medical evaluation. Jesus Christ, we're rolling. Address again. I gave it. One more thing, Vance. The grandfather is Quentin Vexley, owns Vexley Auto Group. Courtesy call to the Glastonbury chief and to ADA Hollenbeck, if she's reachable. This is going to get loud. Already on it, sir. I splashed water on my face, looked at the tired old man in the mirror, and thought, I'm sorry, August. I'm so sorry I let it get this far. Then I started recording video on my phone and walked back to the table, holding it casually at my hip. August was back in his chair, eating green beans one at a time, mechanically, the way you do when finishing your plate is the price of being left alone. Quentin was already back into his sales pitch to Tobias, needling him about hockey being for rich kids, football toughening a boy up, no offense, son, while I kept filming and kept my face still. The doorbell rang 18 minutes later. 2 state troopers, a Glastonbury officer, a paramedic, and Lieutenant Vance Broadcast, gray at the temples now, 55. A man I'd trained on his first major fraud case 26 years ago. Quentin half stood. What the hell is this? This is harassment. Private property. Vance knelt by August 1st, son, I'm Vance. I'm a police officer. My friend here is going to look at you, okay? Then he straightened and looked at Quentin. We're here in response to a call from a witness in this home reporting a felony assault on a minor. Please remain seated. Witness? What witness? Vance turned to me. Sir, can you confirm what you reported? I set my napkin down. My name is Wendell Coffey. I'm August's paternal grandfather. Approximately 22 minutes ago, in this dining room, I personally observed Mr. Vexley grab the child by the collar, lift him off the floor, and throw him against that wall. I pointed to the crack in the drywall. The child couldn't breathe normally for about 40 seconds. Mrs. Vexley audibly approved. My daughter-in-law thanked her father. I have video. Quentin's face went from red to purple to a waxy gray. You called the cops at my dinner. Who the hell are you to take his word over mine? Vance's jaw tightened. This man is Wendell Coffey. He served 31 years as a senior forensic accountant with the Department of Justice, testified in over 200 federal cases, and trained me when I was 26 years old. When he tells me what he saw, I believe him before he finishes the first sentence. The room went silent. Marigold looked at me like she'd never seen me before. The paramedic straightened up from August. Tenderness along the upper spine, pupils slightly uneven. I'd like to take him to the ER. He's fine, Marigold snapped. Don't touch him. Ma'am, that decision isn't yours alone right now. Tobias stood up slowly, hands flat on the table like he was steadying himself against an earthquake. Take him, he said. Take my son to the hospital. I'm coming. As the paramedic carried August past me, wrapped in a foil blanket, my grandson reached out and touched my hand. Grandpa, are you coming? I'll be right behind you, I promised. Quentin Vexley was arrested at his daughter's dining room table at 5:37 p.m. Still wearing his napkin tucked into his collar. Risk of injury to a minor, a Class C felony, and third-degree assault. Penelope wasn't cuffed that night, but she got a stern lecture about mandatory reporting and a promise of a follow-up call from Child and Family Services. At Hartford Hospital, doctors found a hairline fracture of August's C2 vertebra, a high cervical fracture, the kind that with a little more force leaves a child in a wheelchair for life or worse. Tobias put his head in his hands and made a sound I'd never heard a grown man make. "Dad, who are you?" he finally asked. "I'm your father," I told him. "That's what I am. Everything else was just a job I used to have." I explained why I'd never told him. I never wanted him introducing me at parties as his dad, the federal agent. I wanted to be his dad, the boring guy in the brown Buick. He asked why I hadn't shut Quentin up years ago when the man first started needling him. "Because Tobias," I said, "people show you exactly who they are when they think you don't matter." I was filing every single time. I was waiting. "For what?" he asked. "For tonight, I guess." I just didn't know it'd be tonight. Then he asked about Marigold, about her saying, "Thank you, Daddy." "I can't unhear that," he said. "What do I do?" I told him that wasn't mine to decide, but the state was about to file charges, and Family Services was about to open a file, and he needed to decide right now whose side he was on, hers or his son's. He couldn't be on both. He looked toward the pediatric ward doors for a long time. "His side," he finally said. "Always his side. We start there." The next morning, I called Oira Rookhold, a retired federal deputy chief turned family attorney, who was 4 feet 11, 100 pounds, and the most terrifying litigator I'd ever watched work a courtroom. "I'll eat that woman for breakfast," she said. "Bring me the file by Wednesday." Then I called Bernie Stoltzman, an old IRS criminal investigations colleague, who'd spent 20 years auditing car dealerships. Vexley Auto Group, 3 locations. "I want to know if the books are clean." A long pause. "Wendell, are we doing what I think we're doing?" "I'm just an old man asking a friend a professional question." He laughed. "You haven't lost a step. Give me 4 days." I wasn't in a hurry. 31 years of this work had taught me that men who throw their grandchildren against walls do not run clean businesses. There's a tax to being a bully, and eventually the IRS comes to collect. August came home from the hospital in a soft cervical collar, and he came home to my house because Marigold refused to leave Glastonbury and had already hired an attorney to file about parental alienation. He didn't know yet who he was about to meet. The first week, August barely spoke, flinched at loud noises, and crawled into Tobias's bed at 3 a.m. after nightmares. I bought him a real fishing pole and set it in the corner where he could see it. The first time he smiled was the night he asked if I'd really been a spy. "No, buddy. I was an accountant. I just looked at numbers." "Numbers are boring," he said. "That's why bad guys think nobody's watching." He thought about it seriously and said he wanted to be an accountant. I laughed until I cried. 2 weeks later, Bernie called back. Vexley Auto Group had been running a curbing operation across all 3 locations for at least 6 years, buying salvage and flood title vehicles out of state, washing the titles through a Delaware shell LLC, reselling them as clean, at least $1.4 million in unreported income, probable wire and mail fraud, structured cash deposits that screamed Bank Secrecy Act violations. The registered agent on the shell company was Pernilla Vexley, not an accessory, a co-principal. I sat on my back porch that evening with my dog Biscuit's head on my knee, listening to August laugh at cartoons inside, while Tobias discussed emergency custody motions with Oira on the phone. I want to be clear. I wasn't gleeful. I felt the same cold, settled certainty you feel fixing a leak that's been dripping for months. You don't celebrate. You just stop hearing the drip. The criminal case moved fast. My video, the medical records, the cracked drywall, August's forensic interview. Quentin's attorney tried for a plea. The state wanted trial. 6 weeks after that Sunday, Quentin got a registered letter from IRS Criminal Investigation opening a tax fraud probe. 3 days later, the Connecticut DMV suspended all 3 dealer licenses. 2 days after that, his floor plan financing was pulled because the license suspension voided his loan covenants. In 1 week, he went from a man out on bail to a man with his entire business empire frozen. He called Tobias screaming that his father had done this to him. Tobias said quietly, "I don't think you did anything wrong, Quentin," and hung up. Marigold filed for divorce that December, expecting an easy, uncontested split. Instead, she got Oira Ruckhold, who filed a counter-petition the same afternoon with 37 exhibits, medical records, the police report, preliminary family services findings, sworn neighbor statements about years of yelling and slammed doors. By Christmas, Tobias had emergency custody. By February, full custody with Marigold allowed only supervised visits after completing a court-ordered family violence program. She never finished it. Quentin's trial began in March. I sat in the third row every day in a new blue suit. Pernilla took a separate plea deal in exchange for testifying against her husband, claiming on the stand she'd been afraid to intervene. A lie, but the video did the real work anyway. The jury deliberated 2 hours and 11 minutes. Guilty on all counts. The judge told him that a grown man 3 times an 8-year-old size throwing that child against a wall and then sitting down to finish his dinner was not merely criminal but contemptible, and gave him 5 years with a 3-year mandatory minimum. He never looked at me again. August was waiting on the porch with Biscuit when I got home. "He's going away for a long time," I told him. "Long enough that by the time he's out, you'll be tall enough he wouldn't dare." We went fishing the next weekend at my brother's cabin in Vermont, and August caught a 14 inches brook trout, the biggest fish of his short life, grinning with a missing front tooth. That picture's still on my mantle. In May, Marigold showed up at my door, thinner, changed, asking to apologize. I let her say her piece, that she'd grown up afraid of her father, spent her life trying to please him, that making Tobias small had somehow made her father big, the only kind of love she understood. When she finished, I told her she wasn't entitled to my forgiveness, and she certainly wasn't entitled to August. If she wanted a relationship with that boy, she'd have to earn it exactly the way the court laid out, step by step, visit by supervised visit, year by year, and it might not work. At the bottom of my porch steps, she asked if I'd been behind the IRS investigation. I told her the truth was simpler than she thought. Her father committed years of fraud, and the federal government noticed. I never told her about the 2 phone calls I made to 2 old friends, asking what a concerned citizen should do with what he'd personally seen. Everything after that was just the system working the way it's built to work. Quentin destroyed himself. I only made sure the right people were watching. That's the difference between revenge and justice. Revenge is private satisfaction. Justice is a public reckoning. Revenge dirties your hands. Justice only asks that you not look away. I'm 68. I still live in Wethersfield, still drive the Buick, still shop on Tuesdays. August is 10 now. He lives with Tobias most nights, but stays with me on weekends. For the big yard, for Biscuit, for the workshop where I'm teaching him to whittle. He sleeps through the night now. He plays hockey, not football, because he asked his father, and his father said yes. Some evenings, after August is asleep, Tobias and I sit on the porch and just listen to the crickets. One night last fall, he put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Dad, thank you. For all the years you didn't tell me, for the night you did." I didn't say anything back. I just put my hand over his. People will look at you your whole life and decide what you are by the car you drive and how quiet you talk at dinner. Let them. Let them be wrong. The ones who matter will figure it out eventually, and the ones who don't will never know, and that's fine. I'm the boring man in the brown Buick. I'm also the man who made the call. If you stayed with me to the end, I'm grateful. Hit like if it meant something. Subscribe to Frost Vengeance, so the next one finds you. And tell me in the comments where you're listening from tonight.